The trade station was always loud, bright, and full of life. But today something felt different. People walked a little faster, talked a little quieter, and kept glancing toward the same shadowed corner near the old supply crates. In that corner sat a small alien child, no older than 7, curled into herself like she was trying to disappear. Everyone avoided her. Some people said she was cursed. Others said she could read minds. A few claimed she had hurt someone with just a look. No one ever went close enough to learn the truth. Whenever she moved even a little, a cold shiver ran through the crowd, like fear spreading from her tiny body into the air. The child didn't look dangerous. Her clothes were torn like she had been running for days. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, and her big dark eyes were full of fear more than anything else. She kept her knees to her chest and her hands tightly over her ears, as if the sounds of the world hurt her. No one knew her name, and no one cared to ask. But one person noticed something others did not. Mark Holden, a human engineer who had been fixing a broken power conduit nearby, looked up when he heard a soft sniffle. It was almost silent, but he heard it clearly. He turned and saw the alien child wiping her face quickly with the back of her hand. She was crying, quietly, carefully, like she didn't want anyone to hear her pain. Mark felt something tighten inside his chest. He had seen fear in many forms during his life, but this was different. This was the fear of someone who had been alone for too long. Someone who was trying to stay invisible because being seen only brought more hurt. He put down his tools slowly and took a step toward her. Immediately, people near him backed away. A few muttered warnings. One alien merchant whispered, "Human, stay back. She is dangerous." Another pulled his child behind him and said, "Don't get close to that creature." Mark ignored them all. His eyes stayed on the little girl. She looked up slowly, her eyes wide, as if she couldn't understand why someone was approaching instead of running away. When she saw Mark's shadow coming closer, she flinched hard and pressed her back against the wall. Her breath quickened and her fingers shook. Mark stopped several feet away. He didn't want to scare her more. He crouched down so he wasn't towering above her, and kept his hands open and loose. "Hey," he said softly, "you're okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The child didn't look convinced. She studied him like she was waiting for him to attack or yell. Her glowing eyes flicked from his hands to his face, and then down to the floor again. She didn't speak, not even a whisper. Mark slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a wrapped food bar. He placed it on the floor between them and gently pushed it toward her, then moved his hand away. The girl stared at the bar like it was something dangerous. She hesitated, then slowly reached out with trembling fingers. She grabbed it and pulled it close to her chest like she was afraid someone would take it away. People around them gasped quietly. A few shook their heads. One said, "He is a fool. He doesn't know what she can do." But Mark kept watching her carefully. When the girl took a small bite, her whole body relaxed just a little. Her shoulders dropped and her breathing slowed. It was clear she hadn't eaten properly in a long time. Mark gave her a small smile. "See? It's okay," he said gently. But the girl still said nothing. After a moment, she suddenly crawled backward again, her body shaking. Her eyes darted around in fear. Mark turned to see what scared her. 2 station guards were approaching quickly, their faces tense. Their hands hovered over their weapons like they expected trouble. "Step away from the creature," one guard ordered. "For your safety." Mark stood slowly, keeping his body between the guards and the girl. "She's just a child," he said firmly. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her small body trembling harder than before. It almost looked like the air around her was vibrating. And then something shocking happened, something no one on the station had seen before. The child moved quickly and grabbed the bottom of Mark's shirt, hiding behind him like he was the only safe place in the entire world. The entire marketplace froze. People stared in disbelief. The guards stiffened, confused and nervous. And Mark realized something very important at that moment. This child wasn't dangerous. She was terrified. She wasn't a monster. She was alone, and he was the first person she had chosen to trust. Mark did not move when the child grabbed his shirt. He was surprised, but he kept his hands calm and open. He knew sudden movement would only scare her more. The two guards stopped a few steps away. They had never seen her get close to anyone before. Normally she pushed people away without touching them. Normally people ran from her before she even looked up. But now she was hiding behind a human like he was her shield. "Sir, step away from the creature," one guard repeated, his voice shaking even though he was pretending to be brave. Mark shook his head slowly. "She is not a creature. She is a child," he said, keeping his tone soft so the girl would not panic. The girl's small fingers clutched his shirt tightly, as if she thought he might leave her too. Her breathing was quick and shaky, but she was trying to stay quiet. She was trying not to make trouble. Mark looked down at her gently. "You're all right. I won't let them hurt you," he whispered. Something changed in her eyes when she heard his voice. The trembling did not stop, but it softened, like she believed him just enough to stay standing. The guard stepped forward again, and immediately the air grew colder. It felt like fear itself was rising from the girl's body, spreading like invisible frost. The crowd around them backed away even more. Some covered their faces, some left the area completely. The guards hesitated again, because even they could feel the fear crawling up their spines. It was not natural fear. It was something deeper, something created, something she did not want but could not control. Mark raised a hand toward the guards. "Please, just stop," he said. "You're scaring her." "Everyone is scared because she is dangerous," the guard answered, his voice tight. "Do you not feel it? Do you not feel the fear coming from her?" Mark glanced down at the girl. She was barely breathing. She looked like she expected punishment for simply existing. "Yes," Mark said. "But the fear isn't hers. It's something done to her." The guards exchanged nervous looks. They were not allowed to question official reports, but they had never seen the child behave like this. Not once. Mark crouched again slowly, making himself small so she would feel safer. The girl peeked from behind his arm, her eyes glossy and wet. She looked so tired, like she had been running and hiding for too many days, maybe weeks. He spoke softly. "Can you come with me? Just to somewhere safe, somewhere quiet." She didn't answer with words, but she gave the smallest nod. It was barely visible, but Mark saw it. When he extended his hand, she stared at it silently. She lifted her own hand halfway, then pulled it back quickly like she expected pain. Mark kept his hand out, not forcing her, not rushing her. After a long moment, her tiny glowing fingers touched his palm gently. The crowd gasped again. No one had touched her willingly before. Mark stood, lifting her slowly to her feet. She held his hand the way lost children hold on to something safe for the first time. He turned toward the guards. "I'm taking her to the med bay," he said firmly. "She needs food, rest, and medical help." "That is not allowed," the guard said. "She has restrictions placed on her." "What restrictions?" Mark asked. The guards stayed silent, because they did not know. They only followed orders. They were never told why she was alone, why she was hungry, why she was hunted. They only knew she drew fear from everyone. Mark took one step forward. The girl followed tightly. The guards did not stop him. They simply watched with wide eyes as the fear in the air lessened the farther Mark walked away with her. The girl looked up at him with confusion. Her voice cracked like she had not used it for a long time. Why you no afraid?" She whispered. Her voice was tiny and broken, like it hurt her to speak. Mark looked at her gently. "Because I see you, not the fear around you," he said. "You're just a child who needs help." Her eyes filled again with tears, but this time they were not only from fear. There was something else there, something small but growing. Maybe hope, maybe relief, maybe the first piece of trust she had felt in years. As they walked through the station hallway, people still stepped away, but their whispers grew confused instead of angry. No one understood how the feared child could walk beside a human so quietly. She held Mark's hand like it was the only thing keeping her balanced, and he squeezed her hand gently to let her know he was still there. Far behind them, the guards finally spoke. "This is going to cause problems," one whispered. The other replied, "Yes, but maybe someone needed to help her." Mark didn't hear them. He only focused on the small girl beside him, the child everyone avoided, the child no one wanted. the child he now felt responsible for. And as they moved deeper into the station, Mark felt something he had not felt in years, a quiet determination. He didn't know her story yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not abandon her like everyone else had. Mark led the child through the quiet hallway, the noise of the marketplace fading behind them like a bad memory. The girl walked close beside him, her small hand gripping his tightly, as if letting go would drop her into darkness again. She did not speak, she only kept watching everything around her with wide, scared eyes. Every sound made her flinch, every shadow made her shrink. Mark slowed his steps so she wouldn't panic. He wanted her to feel safe, even if it was just for a few minutes. When they reached an empty maintenance room, Mark gently pushed the door open. "We'll stay here for a moment," he said softly. "No guards, no crowd." The girl stepped inside slowly, like she was entering a place she was not allowed to touch. She sat on the floor in the corner, curling her knees to her chest again. Mark sat a few feet away, not too close, not too far. He waited silently. He knew she needed a moment to breathe. After a long pause, she lifted her hand and pointed to her neck. Mark frowned gently and leaned closer. He saw faint glowing scars, thin lines like someone had pressed sharp metal against her skin. The glow pulsed weakly with every breath she took. "What happened to you?" Mark whispered, but the girl only shook her head quickly, a terrified movement, like she was afraid talking about it would bring someone back. She looked around, found a small piece of broken plastic on the floor, and held it like a pencil. Then she bent down and began drawing on the dusty tiles. Mark watched as she drew a circle with sharp lines pointing outward. The symbol looked strange, almost painful. "What is that?" Mark asked. The girl hesitated, then touched the symbol with her fingertip. Her voice cracked softly as she whispered, "Fear mark." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "Fear mark? What does that mean?" he asked gently. The girl reached up and touched the glowing scars on her neck, then touched the symbol again, then pointed to her own chest. She was trying to explain, trying to speak with gestures since her voice was too weak or too scared. Mark suddenly understood just a little. "You didn't choose this, did you?" he said softly. "Someone did something to you." She looked at him with eyes full of pain and slowly nodded. Her hands trembled as she drew another shape this time. It was a tall figure holding something like a collar beside it. She drew a small figure. Her tiny, helpless, the tall figure had sharp lines drawn over its head, a sign of danger. Mark swallowed hard. "Someone kept you," he said. "Someone hurt you." The girl nodded again, then quickly erased the drawing with her hands. She looked terrified at her own drawing, like drawing their faces might call them back. Mark took a slow breath. He understood now why the fear around her felt unnatural. Someone had created it. Someone had turned her fear into something. She could not control a weapon. She never wanted a curse put on a child who didn't even understand why. "It's not your fault," Mark said. "None of this is your fault." Her eyes filled with tears again. She pressed her forehead to her knees silently, her small shoulders shaking. Mark wanted to hug her, but he held back. He didn't want to move too fast. He just stretched his hand out gently and placed it near her on the floor, not touching, only showing he was there. After a long moment, the girl slowly lifted her head and rested her tiny hand on top of his. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but she chose to touch him, and that meant more than anything she could have said. The lights in the room flickered. Mark looked up, confused, then looked back at her. "Is this because you're scared?" he asked gently. She shook her head slowly, then pointed at the scars on her neck, then at the flickering lights. Mark realized she wasn't causing the fear intentionally. It was part of something inside her, something artificial, something forced into her body. He whispered, "They changed you." She nodded, her expression full of shame she did not deserve. Mark leaned closer. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You are not dangerous. Those people made you this way, but you are still a child, and I won't let them hurt you again." Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. The girl froze instantly. Her breath stopped. She clutched Mark's sleeve with both hands, her eyes full of terror. Mark stood quickly, putting himself between her and the door. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The girl whispered painfully, They Come. Mark's heartbeat grew louder in his ears. He did not know who they were, but he understood one thing very clearly now. The people who had hurt her were looking for her again, and they were getting closer. Mark whispered, "Stay behind me," and she obeyed instantly, hiding again behind his legs, trusting him more than she trusted the entire universe. The handle of the door rattled. Someone tried to open it. Mark took a deep breath, ready to face whoever had come, because he knew one thing for certain now. He was not going to let them take her again. The door shook again, the metal handle twisting harder this time. The girl clung to Mark's leg, her small fingers digging into his clothes like she thought the door would swallow her whole if she let go. Mark kept one hand behind him, reaching for her gently. "It's all right. Stay with me," he whispered, though his heartbeat was loud and uneasy. The door burst open with a sharp hiss. 3 tall alien soldiers stepped inside, their armor dark, their helmets shining under the flickering lights. They looked like hunters who had finally found what they were searching for. Their eyes locked on the girl immediately, and the girl made a tiny sound, half fear, half memory of pain. She tried to hide completely behind Mark, but she was too small to disappear. One soldier lifted a glowing device and pointed it at her. "Subject 11, he said coldly. "You must come with us." Mark stepped forward instantly, blocking their view. "She is not going anywhere with you," he said, his voice steady even though he felt like shouting. The soldiers studied him silently, confused that a human would interfere. "Move aside," the lead soldier ordered. "She is government property." Mark felt anger rush through him. "She is a child," he snapped. "Not property." The girl's fear grew so fast the air felt heavier. The lights dimmed again. The temperature dropped. The soldiers stiffened as the fear field reached them. They flinched even though they tried to hide it. The fear wasn't theirs. It was forced into them through her presence. "Control your weapon," one soldier hissed at the child. But she only shook her head violently, terrified, unable to stop anything happening around her. Mark lowered himself slightly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't let them take you." The child's trembling slowed just a little, like his voice pushed the cold away. The soldiers stepped forward, ignoring the discomfort. "She is dangerous," the leader growled. "She carries a fear generator inside her body. She cannot be allowed to roam free." Mark stared at them with shock. "You put something inside her," he said. "You did this to her." The soldiers didn't deny it. One of them spoke with a blank voice. "It is classified." Mark felt a fire rising in his chest. He couldn't believe anyone would do this to a child. "You experimented on her," he said. "You tortured her. Stand aside," the soldier repeated, his patience thin. The girl hid her face against Mark's back. Shaking hard, she whispered one broken word. "No," she begged. "Please no." Her voice made the soldiers pause for a second. Maybe surprised she could still speak. Maybe surprised she wasn't just a silent object to them anymore. Mark raised both hands protectively. "If you want her," he said quietly, "you will have to go through me." The soldiers exchanged looks, not expecting the human engineer to challenge them. "You are interfering with the law," one warned. "This will not end well for you." Mark didn't move, his stance firm, his eyes steady. The girl pressed closer to him, as if he was the only thing left in the universe that wasn't trying to harm her. The lead soldier activated the glowing device again. A low hum filled the room. "Step aside or be removed," he threatened. But before they could move, the fear field suddenly spiked. The temperature dropped so sharply that frost formed on the metal wall. The soldiers stumbled back, their helmets fogging. The girl wasn't doing it on purpose. She was simply too scared, too overwhelmed, too broken from what had been done to her. Mark crouched and held her shoulders gently. "Look at me," he whispered. "You're not alone. You're safe. Breathe." Her eyes lifted to his slowly, tears falling silently. But his calm voice reached her again. The fear field softening little by little, the frost melting slowly. The soldiers stared at Mark with disbelief. "She responds to him," one muttered. "How is that possible?" "She was designed to repel," another said. "Not to trust." Mark stood again, his hand still resting protectively on her back. "You can't take her," he said firmly. The soldiers raised their weapons. The girl gasped, her whole body tightening. Before they could fire, a voice echoed from the hallway, sharp and commanding. "Stand down." A new figure appeared at the door, a high-ranking official in silver uniform, his face serious, his eyes locked on the child. Finally, the lead soldier said, "Sir, we have the subject." "Subject," the official interrupted coldly, "is not what she is." The soldiers froze, confused. The official walked slowly toward Mark and the girl, his expression complicated. "You two, come with me," he said quietly. "There are things you need to know." Mark hesitated, but the girl gently tugged his shirt, trusting him to decide. He nodded once. "We'll go," he said. The soldiers stepped aside, unsure and shocked. Mark lifted the frightened girl into his arms, her small hands clinging to his shirt, and together they followed the official down the hall, unaware that the biggest truth about her past was waiting just ahead. The official walked ahead with calm, steady steps, but Mark could feel tension in the air. The girl clung to him tightly, her small fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. She buried her face in his chest like she feared the world outside his arms. They entered a quiet chamber deep inside the station, the walls lined with screens and unreadable symbols. The door closed softly behind them, shutting out the soldiers and noise. Only the hum of hidden machines filled the silence. The official turned toward Mark, his expression heavy. "You don't know what she is," he began, "or why everyone fears her." Mark held the girl protectively. "She's a child," he said. "That's all I need to know." The official exhaled slowly. If only the galaxy thought the same, he murmured. Then he tapped a screen. A hologram flickered into view, showing a younger version of the girl in a small containment cell. She was crying silently, her tiny hands banging on the glass. Mark felt the girl tremble in his arms. She turned her face away from the image, as if the memory burned her skin. "She was taken from her mother at birth," the official said. "Her species is known for strong emotional sensitivity, but someone twisted that talent into something else." Mark looked at the glowing scars on her neck. "The fear generator," he whispered. The official nodded. "Yes, they implanted the device to amplify fear, not inside others, but inside herself." Mark felt sick. "So she isn't making people scared because she wants to. She's terrified herself." "Exactly," the official said. "Her fear becomes everyone's fear." The girl whimpered softly, her breath shaking. Mark ran his hand gently over her back, whispering, "It's okay, you're safe." The official continued. "Her mother tried to get her back. That's the part no one talks about." He changed the screen, revealing another hologram. This one showed a tall alien woman breaking into a facility. Alarms blaring, soldiers firing stun rounds. The woman reached to sell her daughter's cell. She touched the glass with both hands, crying. The girl in Mark's arms sobbed quietly, her tiny body trembling so hard it felt like she might break apart. The official lowered his voice. "Her mother almost succeeded. She managed to open the cell. She grabbed her daughter, but..." He paused. "She was struck down before she could escape." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, feeling anger rise like fire. "The little one survived," the official said, "but she was taken back, studied, tested, and eventually moved from place to place until she escaped 3 months ago." "She's been alone for 3 months," Mark whispered. "Starving, hiding, hunted." The girl lifted her head slowly, her eyes red and full of heartbreak. She placed her small hand on Mark's chest, as if trying to hold on to something real, something warm, something safe. The official nodded sadly. "She has been found twice since then. Anyone who approached her felt the fear spike and assumed she was attacking. They locked her out of stations, chased her away. Some tried to capture her, but no one helped her," Mark said quietly. "No one saw she was scared. Most people cannot feel the difference," the official said. "Fear is fear, even if it's not their own." Mark hugged her closer. "She doesn't deserve any of this." The official looked at them for a long moment. "And yet the soldiers outside still believe she belongs to the program," he said. "They want her back because the experiment is incomplete." Mark felt the girl tense. She shook her head violently, whispering a broken, "No. No, go back. No." Her fear spiked again. The walls creaked. The lights flickered. Mark held her tightly, whispering calm words. The official stepped forward and lowered his voice. "There is something you must understand. She trusts you, unbelievably so. She has never reacted this way to anyone else." Mark looked down at her face pressed against his chest. "I'm not letting them take her," he said. The official studied him carefully, then nodded. "I believe you," he said. "But you must realize what that means." Mark frowned. "What does it mean?" The official tapped a new hologram, showing a map of the station, red markers everywhere. "It means they will chase you," he said. "They will hunt you both until they get her back." Mark didn't hesitate. "Then I'll run," he said. "I'll protect her." The girl wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on like he was her whole world. Her fears softened a little, replaced by something fragile but real trust. The official looked at them with something like guilt. "There is more," he said quietly. "Her mother left a message, hidden in her genetic code." Mark blinked. "A message?" The official nodded. "And I think you're the only one she'll allow us to reveal it to." Mark tightened his hold on her gently. "Whatever it is, I'll hear it," he said. The girl looked up, tears still on her face, and whispered a tiny word, "Mama." And the room filled with silence, heavy, painful, and full of things yet to be discovered. The room fell silent for a long moment, the girl's tiny whisper hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Mark held her close, feeling her heart beating fast against his chest. The official lowered his eyes, as if he wished he could change the past but knew he could not. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the chamber. Red lights flashed overhead. The official looked sharply at the screen beside him. Soldiers were moving through the station rapidly, their markers spreading like a swarm. "They found your location," the official said, his voice tense. "You must move now." Mark adjusted his grip on the girl. "Where do we go?" he asked. The official pointed toward a hidden exit behind a sliding panel. "Take the service tunnels. They lead to the lower decks. You'll be harder to track there." "But what about the message from her mother?" Mark asked. The official hesitated, then tapped a small device on the table. "Take this," he said. "It will allow you to unlock it when you are safe." Mark nodded and grabbed the device, slipping it into his pocket. The girl clung to him, her small fingers shaking. She could feel the danger coming closer. Her fear made the lights flicker again. The official opened the panel, revealing a narrow tunnel with dim blue lights. "Go," he urged, "and keep her close." Mark stepped inside, the door sliding shut behind them, cutting them off from the official and the only part of the station that still felt somewhat safe. The tunnel smelled of metal and engine oil. The floor hummed from the machinery beneath it. The girl kept her face pressed against Mark's shoulder as if she could disappear inside him. He whispered gently, "I've got you done to worry." But she whispered back, "They coming," her voice trembling. Mark didn't doubt her. She felt danger deeper than any alarm. He moved quickly, his footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. The tunnel sloped downward toward the lower decks, each step taking them farther from safety, but closer to escape. A sudden boom echoed behind them. The door they had entered through was being forced open. The soldiers had arrived. Mark tightened his hold on the girl and began to run, his breath loud in the tunnel. The child held onto him tightly, her fear rising, the air growing colder again. The tunnel opened into a larger maintenance hallway, wires hanging loosely on the walls, steam hissing from broken pipes. Mark moved past it all, searching for another path. He saw a ladder leading down further. He climbed down quickly, one hand gripping the ladder, the other holding the girl safely. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, her small body pressed to his chest. At the bottom, they reached the lower decks, a dark maze of cargo crates, old machines, and forgotten storage rooms. This part of the station was rarely visited, the perfect place to hide or be hunted. Mark heard footsteps above. The soldiers had reached the tunnel entrance, their voices echoing. Orders shouted sharply. He ducked behind a row of large containers, breathing hard. The girl peeked up with frightened eyes. "Mark," she whispered. "It's okay," he whispered back. "I'm here." Her small hand reached for his cheek, as if checking if he was real. She seemed calmer when she touched him. The fear around them softened, just a little. Enough for Mark to think clearly again. A loud metallic clang echoed nearby. The soldiers were dropping into the lower decks, their heavy boots hitting the metal floor. Mark peeked between crates and saw the glowing lights of their helmets scanning the darkness. "Spread out," one soldier ordered. "Find the subject." The girl's breath hitched. Mark held her close. "Shh. Stay quiet," he said softly. He moved deeper into the maze, keeping to the shadows. The girl pointing weakly to a narrow maintenance shaft. "There," she whispered. Mark didn't question her instinct. He slipped inside. The shaft was narrow, barely enough space for him to crawl. He shielded the girl with his body as he moved forward. Behind them, the soldiers' scanners beeped. Then one of them shouted, "They're close." The girl's fear spiked again. The metal walls vibrated. Dust raining down, Mark whispered, "Breathe. Slow, just breathe." To his surprise, she tried, her glowing eyes dimming slightly as she focused on his voice. The fear field weakened enough to keep the metal from collapsing. They reached the end of the shaft and dropped into another room, this one filled with old machinery and blinking emergency lights. Mark caught his breath, then set the girl down gently. She pointed at a thick door on the far side. "Go." "Outside," she whispered. Mark checked the door. It led to an emergency evacuation passage, probably connected to escape pods. It was their best chance. But before he could open it, the metal ground shook. Heavy footsteps approached. The soldiers had found the room. Mark lifted the girl again. She wrapped her arms around his neck tightly. She whispered, "Don't leave me." He whispered back, "Never." The door behind them burst open. Soldiers flooding into the room, weapons raised, their voices echoing. "Subject 11, surrender now." Mark took a step backward toward the escape passage, holding the child protectively, her fear swirling like a storm, but held back by one single thread, her trust in him. And Mark knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was no longer running to save himself. He was running to save her.